Hello Fairview Tigers, and welcome to another episode on Speaking of Fairview YouTube channel, a channel dedicated to sharing with you what's up with the Tigers as they focus on academics, athletics, arts, and acts of service. I'm Hannah Januso.
And I'm Corey McCall.
And today's episode will be called Fairview Academies Overview, as we will be interviewing Dr. Lane and Mr. Beall about the academics available at Fairview High School. Here's our interview with the two. Okay, to start, why did Fairview decide to start the academies?
Sure, that's a good question. A couple of things led us to the academies. One of the things that we always talk about is, and kind of a driving mindset for what we do at the high school, is making sure students are college and career ready. Okay, that phrase is kind of important to us. And it's kind of a little bit of a paradox, because if you think about it, what we're doing, like from the first day that a student steps into the high school, we're actually preparing them for life after high school. Like, we're here and we're present and we're doing stuff and engaged in classes and engaged in all of that stuff, but really what we're trying to do is make sure that students have some kind of idea about what their post-Fairview life looks like. And that's where college and career ready comes in. For some students, that means they're looking to go on for more education. They want a 2-year degree, they want an associate's degree, they want a 4-year degree, something along those lines. There are other students who are looking and are prepared for entering the workforce to begin a career after high school. So the pathways and academies that gives us a vehicle, a way to kind of prepare students for life after Fairview High School, which is really kind of our goal with that. And that can happen in a couple different ways. That can happen with, sometimes students find a passion through the pathways and academies. Sometimes students just take different courses and explore different things. Sometimes students find out what they don't want to do. They're like, oh, I tried that. God, that was awful. And that's just as valuable as kind of figuring out what you want to do, too, is figuring out what you don't want to do in the process. So that's kind of how we got there.
And then you kind of mentioned pathways and academies. Could you elaborate on what the difference is between the two?
Yeah, pathways is just a very big, broad kind of, if you picture an umbrella, it's just an umbrella of a term to capture the idea that if you have, beginning in 8th grade now, students have specials rotations through the pathway experiences. Okay, so even back as in 8th grade, they get to kind of sample each one of the pathways. And based on, so the things that converge there, kind of where they cross, it's we're like a Venn diagram, is what are you interested in and what are you good at? The pathways kind of guide you toward courses. That's really all that it is. They just guide you toward a set of courses that we offer, that we say, if these are the things that you're interested in, and these are the things that you're good at, try some of these courses. And if you look, in the handbook that we have, the program of studies and the planning guide, you have some interests, that you develop in 8th grade and 9th grade, and you do some surveys on those and, those kind of things. And it kind of guides you toward a set of courses that you might be interested in. Pathways are, you're not committed to anything, you're not locked into anything. It's just kind of like a philosophical guide that exists for the courses that we offer. For students who do have a particular interest, though, who do kind of feel like, I kind of feel like this is a direction I want to go. I don't feel like I need to do a ton of exploring. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, but I kind of think this is the way I want to go. Then we offer the academy option for them to be a part of kind of a more focused, a more deliberate and hands-on experience in that field over about 1.5 years to a 2-year period in the academy. So pathways is just a big umbrella term. And then academies is for students to have the opportunity, if they do know that, hey, this is something I want to try and know a little bit more about. Did I miss anything there? You can chime in on that?
No, okay. No, that was good. The only thing I just would reiterate is even both. The pathways and the academies. You might think that, well, if a student's interested in the academies, then they have their mind made up and they know what they want to do after they leave. Mm-hmm. That's not the goal. We do have students that do have their mind made up, and we want to facilitate that. But we're just as open to just providing an experience so they can make a more informed decision when they leave here as seniors. Mm-hmm. And we've had some success stories of students that really thought that they wanted to do one particular thing, and then they go through the academy and they have job shadow and field experience and realize, I don't want to spend my life doing this. And they were able to make that pivot here in high school, which in our minds allows them to have a greater chance of success after they leave here. Instead of making that decision junior year of college when they've invested a lot of money, now they can make that decision here and then, spend their money more efficiently on what they want to do after they leave.
That's a really good point about the economics of it.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're looking at an associate's degree, a 4-year degree, or even just some kind of certification and training, another kind of side goal of the whole program is that it's financial. It saves you some money so that you don't have to make as many transitions or decision changes once you leave here as you potentially could, yeah.
And could you guys describe each academy and the experiences one would have in each one?
Sure. And we had some we had a little bit of bad timing with the academies. Like, we had some really good momentum. We got them up and running. We got our first cohort through, and then everything went sideways. So we're kind of reeling a little bit from that. But we were talking about some plans even just last week to get things back on track at the end of this year and the beginning of next year to kind of regroup after. I mean, people weren't together, so it was really hard to kind of get the experiences that we wanted that maybe you guys had even. Sure. The STEM Academy is the original academy in a lot of ways. It started first, and it has a lot of experiences for students in which they create an actual kind of hands-on project through the aid and help of a mentor in the field. And that academy culminates in they just had their presentations 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
It was 2 weeks ago or so. They presented their projects and their research projects publicly. The Human Services Academy is really probably next to Arts and Communication. It's probably the biggest umbrella. It's the kind of the biggest group. They have everything from folks that are interested in going into law, whether that's law enforcement or being a lawyer, or being a social worker, or even going into a service like being a social worker or a teacher. What did we just publish? Preston just finished his course. Mrs. Jablonski and Dr. Zona worked really hard and made a connection with Gannon University so that Mrs. Jablonski can facilitate what is really a Gannon course for free through that academy. So Preston, and then the next group of cohort, we have other students doing it, but Preston was done first, can get a free college class in, and kind of, both that's nice economically, but it's also nice in terms of an experience. Like we said, hey, do I like doing this kind of stuff? And those kinds of things. And hopefully once things get back to normal, they can get some more in the classroom experiences too. The Health and Science Academy covers a lot of things kind of medical and science related. There are different tracks within each of these academies. So that one, if I remember correctly, is research, kind of like a pre-medicine track, and something in like healthcare, like nursing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So those tracks allow students to shadow people in the field. They get a variety of different shadow experiences, which of course they did not have this year because we couldn't shadow anybody this year. But when we were doing that, they actually got to go to hospitals, go to vets, go to chiropractors, and create not so much a project at the end as kind of a presentation, kind of like a portfolio experience that they would demonstrate kind of what they knew. Arts and Communication is another broad term academy. So there is the tracks within that allow for students who want to pursue some kind of written communication or audio-visual communication pathway. And also there's a whole performance end of it, okay, which might be more theater-based or performance-based. And all of these tracks connect students with people in the fields that they're in, so that they can get some authentic experiences in the community kind of firsthand. The Business Academy, oh boy, I'm going to get his tracks wrong. Marketing, finance, and I feel bad that I don't know the third. It's HR? No.
Could it be accounting?
Yes, bingo. It's accounting.
Okay.
It's the third.
Okay.
They are doing. It depends on which track you're in, what kind of specific thing they're doing. But actually, an example of what they did is they have a variety of students in that pathway that got IRS certified this year, and they offered tax prep help for both staff and community members for free through the training that they did. They could do that virtually. So no, normally they would go to a place to do that and do it in person and stuff like that, but they could do some of that virtually this year as well. Is that 5? Did I miss one?
And then another thing that is 5.
Okay.
Another thing that the marketing branch of the Business Academy, they've done a lot with the Fairview Cares organization, marketing those fundraisers and getting the word out, having the website, working with those organizations that we will eventually then donate to, and also organizing some of the fundraising activities. Now, obviously, with COVID, some of those things have been put on hold, but that's kind of the intent, and so with all of these, there's the common theme of getting, like Dr. Lane said, the real world experience with someone in that field, but also trying to, many of them have solving some type of problem, within the community, within, the school, within the student's personal life, whatever it may be, whether it's designing a STEM project to solve a small problem, or being a part of an organization to promote, something that is helpful to the community.
It's really been, those connections, those real world connections are the most important part, and that's been the toughest part with COVID. We really, really kind of in many ways just have had to reset, kind of start from scratch again, because it was really just tough to get the experiences that students needed the past year and a half or so.
So would you say that's like the main benefit of joining like one of the academies, like the real world experience?
I would say that, yes. I mean, these things aren't unrelated. I think the real world experience, getting to see what it looks like to do that kind of thing day in and day out, is connected to helping you figure out if that's something you want to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It doesn't solve all the answers. There's still a lot of things to consider in that. But it helps you figure out, like, this is where my interest and my ability converge. Because that's where those things have to cross. Because you might be really good at a particular subject area or thing, but you get an experience and you're like, oh man, that's not for me. Or, sometimes, and this happens a lot early in the process, is you might have an interest in something, but you don't really know a lot about what it means, and you might find out that's not where your skill set is. Like, that's not really what I'm best at. Even though I thought I was interested in that, I might be, but now that I see, I kind of need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Gosh, I'm not really good at that, which then makes me kind of miserable when I'm trying to do that thing. So I would say, that's probably the best, rationale behind connecting folks with somebody in the field.
And anecdotally, I would, I'm thinking of one particular student. We have more experience with the STEM Academy because it's been going a little longer. But a student that was just what Dr. Lane was describing, had a lot of interest in an engineering field, but necessarily didn't have the ability, didn't have the transcripts to get into a school for engineering, didn't really excel in some of the coursework that you would need for that. However, through the STEM Academy experience, he was able to fine-tune some skills that, a university took a chance on him, and he's doing very well in a branch of engineering, that fits his skill sets and also aligns with the interest that he had. And I think without that experience, he would have never had a chance to pursue that, post-secondary, wise, to get that degree. So, it's nice to hone in on some of those skills that you might need to align with your interests.
And for my next question, could you discuss some of the academic requirements? You kind of touched on those to be in or stay in a particular academy.
Mm-hmm. Those vary from academy to academy. All of the academies involve some kind of application process. Sometimes that can be conducted both through a transcript review, and an interview. Sometimes it's done through a written submission, of an explanation of interest or ability or what kind of things you would like to do. And then you would maintain a certain GPA within there. Now, the goal of the academies is also, too, that, it's not reserved just for kids like on an AP track. Okay, there's room within those tracks for really kind of almost I don't want to say in every track to all students, but there are lots of options for students all across the academic spectrum here at the high school to be a part of the academies. Yeah.
So if a student is interested in joining a particular academy, you kind of just mentioned it, but like, so what's the process for them?
Yeah, we're gonna create a standardized process where things kind of happen simultaneously. And the only thing we have to decide now is whether or not that's going to happen at the end of this school year or the beginning of next school year. So we'll publicize a process for all of the academies simultaneously at the same time and let folks know, hey, this is the window that it's going to take place. Here's the window of time during which that's going to take place. And if you're interested, here are steps 1, 2, and 3 to follow to make sure that you get that shot.
Another question we had was, like, with colleges becoming test optional for the SAT, how do these academies help to build your story to distinguish you as a student?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah, that is, and that kind of alludes to the anecdote that I was talking about. You know, that really allowed that student to create a narrative that went beyond what his transcript said, and that's why the university was willing to take a chance on him. Mm-hmm. And especially now that schools are going to be test optional, you need something to set yourself apart. And I would say even when tests are included, this is something to set yourself apart, because when it's a very competitive environment out there, you have plenty of students that have taken AP courses that have gotten A's and did really well on their SATs and ACTs. So what's going to make you look more marketable? It's going to be these authentic experiences. And so universities want to see something unique. They want to see something that is applicable to the real world, and you know that can really help. I mean, there have even been some academy projects that have turned into internships for students when they were in college. You know, Penelec saw one of our students' projects and said, "We want to work with you right when you graduate." You know, and so he's been doing internships with Penelec as he goes to school. You know, so it opens the doors and allows for opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise.
And that kind of, you know, when you go back to the idea of if you're a student looking at a 4-year college, I mean, just if you think about the logistics of the practice, if you get into a school, if you get into a Penn State, Ohio State, Allegheny, Cornell, Bucknell, whatever it happens to be, if you get in there, if you're looking to get in there, if you're a candidate for that school, if you have the scores to get in there, so does everybody else. Like everybody else that's a candidate has those same scores that you do if you're a candidate to get in. So really kind of like Mr. Beall said, what is the part of your narrative that makes you a little bit different than the other version of the student that has the same ACT or SAT score? You know, what kind of makes you a little bit different in that kind of sets you apart in terms of what you're talking about and in that narrative that gets created.
So that was actually our last question, so thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Good opportunity.
This is now the end of the show. So to wrap up, if you are an FHS student, please think about if you would like to join one of these academies. Finally, I would like to give a big thank you to several people and apps that have helped make this podcast possible, especially our honors public speaking teacher, Mrs. Stevens, our principals, Dr. Lane and Mr. Beall, for giving us the opportunity to make this type of project, the app iMovie for enabling us to put together this podcast, including allowing us to use its music, our interviewees, and you for listening to this podcast. I'm Corey McCall.
And I'm Anna Januso.
On the Speaking of Fairview YouTube channel. I hope you'll join us next time for another episode as we continue to highlight the academics, athletics, arts, and acts of service here at Fairview High School.